They said Hollywood was built on dreams, but the real foundation was desire. Behind every sparkling gown and studio smile there were whispers. Not about talent, not about art, but about who they spent the night with, and what that bought them in the morning. Fame, money, power. In that world, everything had a price. The cameras captured beauty, but the real stories unfolded when they stopped rolling. Dressing rooms turned into confession booths, hotel suites became audition halls. And while the headlines called them stars, behind closed doors they were survivors, learning how to turn lust into leverage. In an age when purity sold tickets, the ones who refused to play innocent rewrote the rules. They didn't hide behind morality. They seduced it, twisted it, and wore it like perfume. These weren't your typical screen darlings. They were the women who played the most forbidden role of all, themselves. Hollywood called them dangerous. Men called them irresistible. Wives called them a nightmare. But everyone, absolutely everyone, remembered them. Virginia was the first of her kind. Golden hair, soft voice, and eyes that could make a man confess sins he hadn't even committed yet. On screen, she was the girl next door. Off screen, she was the door everyone wanted to open. She learned early that the industry didn't reward good girls, so she stopped pretending to be one. She had two scripts, the one she performed for the director, and the one she lived after the cameras cut. In smoky rooms and champagne-lit parties, she knew how to make silence louder than words. A studio light operator once said, "Virginia didn't flirt, she hypnotized." Her laughter could melt the most faithful husband. Her glance could erase guilt faster than whiskey. She wasn't chasing love, she was chasing survival, and she played that game better than anyone. Then there was Beverly, the woman who could make sin look like poetry. She wasn't an A-list name, but on every set, every crew member knew her legend. They said she used to slip secret notes into her co-stars' scripts. Some were invitations, others, instructions. No costume required. One read, she didn't crave statues or awards. She craved control. She wanted to feel the world spin because she pushed it. One actress once whispered, Beverly didn't want the Oscar. She wanted the studio, overnight. And maybe she did, because every man who met her walked away a little emptier, and a little more haunted. These women weren't victims of Hollywood. They were its architects, building empires on scandal and survival. Their stories weren't told in magazines, but in the silence that followed when their names were spoken. They didn't apologize. They didn't pretend. They knew exactly what they were doing, and that's what made them unforgettable. Linda walked into Hollywood like a storm disguised as silk. She wasn't here to ask for permission. She was here to take what she wanted, the roles, the attention, the men. With her dark hair and eyes that burned like trouble, she carried an energy that made every room lean toward her. She wasn't the kind of woman who waited to be discovered. She discovered the weakness in others and used it. Producers called her dangerous. Reporters called her unpredictable. But Linda called herself honest. She knew what the system demanded: beauty, submission, temptation, and she gave it back multiplied by 10. A Universal producer once whispered that during a single week of shooting, she dated the leading man by day and the costume designer by night. When someone warned her that she might ruin her reputation, she smiled and said, "Which one? The one you invented?" Her bed had no borders, her body, no rules, her ambition, no limits. She was scandal and freedom rolled into one, a living contradiction the cameras could never fully capture. To men, she was temptation. To women, a warning. To herself, she was simply alive. Then there was Barbara, the kind of beauty that could break a man's mind and make him thank her for it. She came to Hollywood with dreams and left behind a trail of destruction made of broken hearts and broken promises. She loved actors, directors, even gangsters. Her affairs were headlines before her films were. Once, a fight between two of her lovers, Tom and Franchot, ended with one in a hospital bed and the other behind bars. Barbara didn't cry, didn't hide, didn't apologize. She poured another drink and lit another cigarette. By 39, she was walking down Sunset Boulevard, no longer as a star, but as a woman selling what the world had already stolen from her, for $5. Her face was still beautiful, but her eyes had stopped shining. She had lived too fast, burned too bright. Hollywood moved on, pretending she never existed, but the city still remembered. The way she laughed too loudly, loved too recklessly, and died too quietly. And then came Yvonne, a name whispered in smoky jazz bars and after-hour parties. Before she became television's favorite monster mom, she was fire wrapped in velvet. A Canadian blonde with pin-up curves and a reputation that terrified every studio executive who met her. They said she had more lovers than lines of dialogue, and maybe it was true. She filmed westerns under the sun and danced with gangsters under moonlight. Married actors, musicians, producers. She collected them like memories. Once she said, "I've been many things, but never boring." When the cameras finally turned her into a household name, no one dared to mention her past. But those who knew, the men, the parties, the secrets, they remembered. Because Yvonne never played by Hollywood's rules. She made her own. Before the world saw her drenched in blood on screen, Ingrid Pitt had already survived the kind of horror no script could imagine. A concentration camp survivor turned queen of British Gothic cinema. Her beauty was haunting, her confidence dangerous. Ingrid didn't flirt with men, she commanded them. When she walked onto a set, she carried both trauma and power, and everyone could feel it. Hammer Films turned her into a legend. Blood-soaked gowns, dark castles, and a voice that sounded like temptation itself. But off-screen, she was no less dramatic. Her contracts demanded privacy, candlelight, and a very specific temperature in her dressing room. Some said she had a no underwear clause, for comfort, for style, or maybe just for control. She seduced producers, actors, and one married diplomat she was caught with on a Berlin balcony. When a reporter once asked how many lovers she'd had, she smiled and said, "Enough to never regret a thing." Her accent melted microphones. Her laugh made even powerful men nervous. Ingrid didn't chase love, she conquered it, one heartbeat at a time. Then came Karen, the French enchantress who arrived in Hollywood like a secret weapon. The studios sold her as the next Garbo, but Karen wasn't there to imitate anyone. She had her own game. Her French accent was her charm, but her mind was her weapon. Within months, she'd broken every rule she wrote for herself. Married actors, directors, a European prince, all caught in her web. A Paramount producer once said, "It's impossible to work with Karen without falling in love or losing your marriage." And he wasn't wrong. She collected hearts the way others collected awards, with grace, cruelty, and purpose. One night, at a party under the California moon, she was caught kissing a rival actress in the garden. When a photographer appeared, Karen lit a cigarette and said calmly, "I got bored of men. Time for a plot twist." Then there was Faith, the girl who belonged to Howard Hughes before she even understood what belonging meant. He discovered her at 16, molded her, controlled her, and kept her like a possession. But when she finally broke free, she learned the most valuable lesson Hollywood had to offer: how to play the game without ever being played again. Faith Domergue turned her heartbreak into her armor. She became a wanderer between sets and lovers, screenwriters, actors, even bullfighters. Once, she left a shoot in Los Angeles because a matador invited her to Madrid. She vanished for 2 weeks. No apologies, no explanations. The tabloids buzzed, the studios complained, but when she returned, they hired her again. Because Faith was chaos wrapped in charm, a woman the industry couldn't control no matter how hard it tried. And then came Susan, fiery, cold, and fearless. The kind of woman who didn't ask for love, only respect. She slept with leading men and old-school legends, the ones who thought they still ran the show. Susan Hayward didn't beg for power. She took it one glance at a time. On set, she was magnetic. Off set, she was dangerous. A co-star once said, "With Susan, you either fell in love or fell apart. Sometimes both." Marie Windsor was not a woman you forgot. She didn't enter a room, she claimed it. Her beauty wasn't soft. It was sharp enough to draw blood. The cameras adored her, but the men behind them feared her. She had a rule, and everyone in Hollywood knew it. Never the same lover twice. One night only, no repeats, no attachments. Some said she kept a secret notebook, filled with initials, dates, and ratings. Others said it was just legend. But every man who spent a night with her swore he'd seen it, or wished he hadn't. During the filming of The Killing, one actor vanished for 2 days after being seen leaving her apartment. When he came back, pale and silent, there was a ring in his pocket he didn't remember buying. Marie just smiled, her lipstick perfect, her silence louder than gossip. She didn't need to raise her voice. Her power was in mystery, in the way she made every man feel like he was the only one, and the last one. Then there was Dolores Del Rio, exotic, divine, untouchable. To American eyes, she was the embodiment of fantasy. But beneath the beauty, Dolores was a strategist. In an era when being Latina in Hollywood meant being dismissed, she turned her accent into a weapon and her body into a passport. She had affairs with directors, actors, and even royalty. She didn't hide her desire, she directed it. A painter once said, "Dolores walked like she already knew every man's secret." She kept a hidden apartment in Los Angeles. No contracts, no cameras, only curtains heavy enough to keep silence sacred. In studio hallways, they called her the mistress of the golden sheets. Not allowed, never allowed, but everyone knew. Dolores didn't beg for attention, she summoned it. Then came Jean Kent, British, elegant, and as dangerous as a dagger in lace. She had the face of a doll and the eyes of a spy. She didn't talk much, but when she did, her words left scars. They said she had lovers on 3 continents and a memory that could ruin marriages. At a film festival in Venice, she vanished from a banquet for 2 hours, returning with a wrinkled dress and a smile that silenced 3 producers. She wasn't a huge star, but no scandal ever passed through Hollywood without brushing her shadow. And finally, Anita Ekberg, wild, untamed, and breathtaking. The moment she appeared in La Dolce Vita, the world knew she wasn't someone you desired, she was someone you surrendered to. Her name became a storm. Her lovers, 2 senators, a singer, and an actor hospitalized from exhaustion after a week in Rome. Once she arrived at an award show in a gown with no underwear, and left with a trophy no one remembered giving her. When reporters asked if the rumors were true, she'd laugh and say, "Which ones? The boring ones or the interesting ones?" They were the women Hollywood tried to shame, silence, or forget. But they couldn't, because long after the lights faded and the gossip columns yellowed, their names still carried electricity. They played the most dangerous game in the world, a game where pleasure was power and desire was survival. They broke rules written by men and built empires from the ashes of scandal. They weren't pure, they weren't safe, they were unforgettable. The women who made Hollywood tremble and taught it what freedom looked like.